Say how old you are.
My name is Eston Bell Jr. I'm 73 years old. I was born in Windsor, North Carolina, but I lived in Orlando, North Carolina. Civil rights movement to me, at the time when I was a little boy, I really didn't understand what it was all about because it just seems like that's the way things were. As far as schooling was concerned, I lived in Orlando, but we had to go to Hosky, North Carolina, to go to school, which was an all-black school. But yet we went through Orlando, which had a school system, but we were not able to go. And so as I grew, I didn't really understand because like whenever we went to town, we would if we walked down the sidewalks and we saw a white person walking on the sidewalk, we had to get off into the street.
Mm.
And as a young boy, you don't really understand those things until you explain them to you. We also had to experience riding in the back of the Greyhound whenever we went to visit my grandmother that lived in Virginia. Uh, the bus station itself had two sides. One side was for the whites, which was really beautiful. The other side was for the blacks, which was kind of drab. And we got our food from the back window outside. Uh, then we moved from there to Careford, North Carolina. We went to a three-room school. We had the first and second and third grade was in room one. We had the fourth, fifth, and sixth was in another room. And then you had the principal's office and the office and kind of like an auditorium. I went to school there for a couple of years. Then we moved to Virginia. And it was like a new beginning. Because in Virginia, even though we were segregated, we had an all-black high school, all-black elementary schools, all-black junior high. And we all lived basically in the same neighborhood. So in my hometown of Portsmouth, Virginia, we had one black high school. We had one junior high and 5 or 6 elementary schools. And so, but it was a little different. We had more freedom because we had our own black businesses, our own theaters, we had our black grocery stores. But I just never got used to the fact that's in North Carolina where my father was always a boy, you know, or Uncle Tom, or Uncle John. And as I grew older, it kind of affected me a lot. And then, but during that time, it seems like the whites figured that you're supposed to do whatever they told you to do. And so they would try to take advantage of you. But as I grew older and then I went into the military, it was still basically the same, but it was more undercover like. So the civil rights movement, it kind of gave me a breath of fresh air because things began to change. Even though going to black schools, the teachers would make you learn because there was things that they would say like, you know, you're going to learn these things because when you get out in the world, they're not going to teach you these things. Particularly the white people were not going to explain and teach you. So I try to share that with my kids because they didn't experience those things that I experienced. And it was even worse with my parents and their generation. So I kind of got it on the tail end. Well, it wasn't the tail end because really until the 60s, middle 60s, it really started changing. But I personally appreciated growing up like that because it taught me the togetherness that we share. And in today's society, it seems like it's not like that anymore. Even though we try, but some things are lost. On the other hand, we need to experience the togetherness of all races because you learn from both races of people. I mean, and we have to teach our generation that we can't, to me, you can't just survive doing one thing. You gotta come together. And particularly in this day and age, we need everybody to fight the problem that we are experiencing as a nation and as a country. So I really appreciate my life that I experienced when I was growing up, and I also appreciate the life that I'm experiencing now as I'm getting older. So I just kind of shared it with my family and all the younger people that I come in contact with that are willing to listen. Because if you don't know where you come from, you won't know where you're going. And so life is.
I stopped right there. If you didn't know where you come from,